I woke up from a coma to find my mother-in-law had moved into my house, thrown out my mother's belongings, and was literally signing documents to steal my home. But she had no idea I'd been awake for 2 weeks, just watching. What she did next made me realize she'd been planning this for years. And what I did back? Let's just say karma came with eviction papers. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Lisa, and I'm 32 years old. Well, I was 32 when this nightmare started. I'm a graphic designer, or at least I was before the accident. I inherited my grandmother's Victorian home 5 years ago when she passed. That house meant everything to me. My mother had grown up there. I'd spend every summer there as a child. When my mom died 3 years ago, I planted a memorial garden in the backyard with her favorite roses and placed these beautiful engraved stones around it with quotes she loved. That house wasn't just property. It was my history, my family, everything I had left of the people I loved most. Then came March 15th. I was driving home from a client meeting when a drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance or the emergency room. I woke up 4 weeks later in a hospital bed with my husband Mark sitting beside me, and I didn't even know my own name at first. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Traumatic brain injury, 3 broken ribs, shattered collarbone, internal bleeding. They'd put me in a medically induced coma to let my brain heal. When I finally came out of it, everything was fog and confusion and pain. So much pain. Mark held my hand and cried and told me he'd been so scared. He said his mother Elizabeth had been there every day, helping him, supporting him. He said she'd been amazing. I should have known something was wrong right then. Elizabeth had never been amazing to me. Not once in the 7 years I'd known her. But I was so out of it, so scared, so grateful to be alive that I just nodded and smiled weakly and said that was nice of her. The drugs made everything feel distant and unreal anyway. Mark visited every day, but he seemed stressed, distracted. He'd check his phone constantly and step out to take calls. I told myself he was just worried about me. He was handling so much. I should be grateful, not suspicious. Then one day, about 2 weeks after I woke up, Mark sat down beside my bed with this nervous energy. He held my hand and said his mother had a suggestion. She thought that since I'd be in the hospital for a while longer, maybe months, someone should stay at the house. You know, to maintain it, keep it secure, water the plants, that kind of thing. And since Elizabeth had just retired from her real estate career, she had plenty of time. She and Mark could move in temporarily, just until I was better. I remember feeling this weird flutter in my stomach. Something felt off. But Mark looked so earnest, so worried, and I was so tired. I said okay. What else could I say? I couldn't take care of the house from a hospital bed. It made sense. It was practical. Mark squeezed my hand and smiled with relief and said his mom would be so happy to help. The next day, Elizabeth came to visit. She swept into my room like she owned it, all fake concern and tight-lipped smiles. She sat down and patted my hand like I was a child and told me not to worry about a single thing. She'd take care of everything. Then she said something that made my blood run cold, even through the morphine haze. She said that Mark should probably get power of attorney over my affairs. Just in case. Just temporarily. You know, in case I needed someone to make decisions while I recovered. I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at me to say no. But Elizabeth kept talking, kept explaining how it was standard procedure, how it was just a precaution, how Mark was my husband and of course he'd only do what was best for me. And Mark just sat there nodding along with this desperate look on his face like he was begging me not to make a scene. So I said okay. I said yes. Because I was scared and vulnerable and stupid enough to trust them. That was my first mistake. But it wouldn't be my last. Elizabeth started calling me every single day. At first, I thought she was just being attentive. She'd give me updates on the house. But the updates felt wrong, passive-aggressive, cruel in subtle ways I couldn't quite name. She'd say things like, "Your garden was so overgrown, Lisa. Had you just let it go completely?" Or, "I'm having the carpets cleaned. They were honestly filthy. When was the last time you maintained this place?" Every conversation left me feeling small and ashamed and like I'd somehow failed at basic adulting. I made excuses for her. I told myself she was just being practical. She worked in real estate for 30 years. She knew about property maintenance. She was helping. I should be grateful. Stop being so sensitive, Lisa. she's doing you a favor. But my best friend Olivia saw right through it. Olivia visited one afternoon and mentioned she'd driven past my house the day before. She got quiet and then she said, "Lisa, I don't want to upset you, but your mom's memorial garden, it's gone." I felt like I'd been punched. Olivia explained that all the stones were removed. The roses were ripped out. There was fresh sod laid down like nothing had ever been there. When I confronted Mark about it that evening, he got defensive. He said his mom thought the memorial looked dated and brought down the property value. He actually said that. Property value. About my dead mother's memorial. I cried myself to sleep that night. And then I felt guilty for crying. Maybe Elizabeth was right. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I wasn't thinking clearly because of my injuries. Mark kept saying I needed to trust his mother's judgment. She knew what she was doing. She was only trying to help. The gaslighting continued. Elizabeth told the nurses I was confused and forgetful. She suggested to Mark that I might need long-term care after discharge. She started talking about memory care facilities within earshot of my room. Mark never defended me strongly enough. He'd just give this weak little laugh and say, "Mom, don't be dramatic," but he never actually told her to stop. I felt myself disappearing, becoming smaller, doubting my own reality. I kept telling myself it would be fine once I got home. Once I was back in my house, everything would return to normal. Elizabeth would move out. Mark and I would work through this stress. I just had to get through recovery. I just had to be patient. Then one evening, I overheard Elizabeth on her phone outside my hospital room door. Her voice was low but clear. She said, "Don't worry. Once we have everything sorted, she won't have a choice. The house will be ours." That's when I finally understood. This wasn't about helping me. This was never about helping me. Elizabeth had been planning to steal my home since the moment I ended up in that hospital bed. And my husband was letting it happen. The next morning, Elizabeth showed up with a manila folder and that sickeningly sweet smile she always wore when she wanted something. She pulled a chair close to my bed and spread papers across my lap table like she was doing me the biggest favor in the world. "Just some routine paperwork, sweetie," she said, clicking her pen. "Insurance forms. You know how hospitals are with their bureaucracy. Sign here, here, and here." I stared at the papers. My head was clearer than it had been in weeks. The doctors had reduced my pain medication, and for the first time since waking up, I felt sharp, present. I picked up the first page and actually read it. My hand started shaking. These weren't insurance forms. The header read "Petition for transfer of property due to mental incapacity." My name was listed as the grantor. Elizabeth's name was listed as the recipient. There were medical evaluations I'd never seen, signed by doctors I'd never met, claiming I had permanent cognitive impairment and could no longer manage my own affairs. Before I could say anything, a nurse came in to check my vitals. Elizabeth snatched the papers back, irritated. "We'll finish this later," she said through gritted teeth. "Get some rest, Lisa. You look confused again." She left the folder on my bedside table and walked out. The moment she was gone, I grabbed that folder with trembling hands. There were more documents inside. Quitclaim deeds. Affidavits stating I was mentally unfit. A letter to the court requesting an emergency conservatorship with Elizabeth as conservator. Every page was dated within the last month. Every page had forged signatures that looked almost like mine. She'd been building a case to declare me incompetent and steal my house while I was literally fighting to relearn how to walk. I had a full panic attack. The nurses rushed in. They sedated me. And even as I slipped under, I was making excuses for her in my head. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was for estate planning purposes. Maybe I was misunderstanding because of my brain injury. Maybe Mark knew and approved and it was all some complicated legal protection I didn't understand. When I woke up, I called Mark. He was distant on the phone, distracted. When I asked him about the papers his mother had brought, he sighed like I was being difficult. "Mom knows what she's doing, Lisa. Just trust her. She's handled property law for decades. Stop questioning everything." Then he said he had to go because his mother needed help with something at the house. My house. He hung up before I could respond. That's when it truly hit me. Mark wasn't just enabling her. He was complicit. He'd chosen his mother over me while I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from an accident that almost killed me. I'd spent weeks defending him in my head, making excuses for his distance, his coldness, his unwillingness to stand up for me. And he'd spent those same weeks helping his mother forge documents to steal my inheritance. I called Olivia. She came immediately. I broke down and told her everything. The papers, Elizabeth's phone conversation, Mark's betrayal, the memorial garden, all of it. Olivia's face went from concerned to absolutely furious. She's a lawyer and she knew exactly what she was looking at. Lisa, this is fraud. Serious fraud. She could go to prison for this. Then Olivia admitted something. She said she'd been suspicious for weeks. She'd hired a private investigator to watch my house. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos. Elizabeth hosting an open house. Elizabeth meeting with real estate attorneys in my living room. Elizabeth telling contractors that I'd died in the accident and she'd inherited the property. There were dozens of photos. Time-stamped. Dated. Irrefutable proof that she'd been actively trying to steal my home while telling people I was dead. Olivia had more. Bank records showing Elizabeth had attempted to access my accounts. She'd failed because Olivia had helped me set up extra security years ago, but the attempts were documented. Elizabeth had also filed that incompetency petition with the county court 3 days ago. There was a hearing scheduled for next week. If I hadn't seen those papers, if that nurse hadn't interrupted, I might have signed away my house without even knowing what I was doing. Then Olivia showed me something else. Something she'd discovered while digging into Elizabeth's background for the case. Elizabeth's late husband, Mark's father, had died 6 years ago and left a substantial estate, rental properties, investment accounts. Elizabeth had never properly reported any of it to the IRS. She'd been collecting rental income from 4 properties for 6 years and hadn't paid a cent in taxes. She'd used that unreported money to fund her lifestyle, pay off her house, and maintain her country club membership. Olivia looked me dead in the eye and said, "We can destroy her. Completely. She committed fraud against you, and she's been committing tax evasion for years. The IRS loves cases like this. We can take everything from her." Something shifted in me then. Something fundamental. I wasn't the scared, apologetic woman who'd spent 3 months making excuses for people who were actively trying to ruin her. That version of me died in that hospital room. The woman who emerged was done being nice to people who mistook kindness for weakness. We spent the next week planning. Olivia got statements from 3 independent neurologists confirming I was completely mentally competent. She got the security footage from my neighbors. She got everything. I played along with Elizabeth's game. I called Mark and told him I was ready to sign whatever papers his mother thought were best. I said I trusted them. I could hear the relief in his voice. The next day Elizabeth came back with fresh documents. She was practically gloating. She sat down, spread the papers out, and started explaining in that condescending voice how this was all for my own good. Olivia was in the bathroom with her phone recording everything through the cracked door. Elizabeth had no idea. She kept talking about how I wasn't capable of managing property anymore, how the accident had left me impaired, how she and Mark would take such good care of my grandmother's house. She actually said she'd been eyeing that house for years. She said it was wasted on me. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd pretended to care while plotting to take everything. I picked up the pen. Elizabeth leaned forward eagerly. Then I set the pen down and said, "Get out of my house. You have 24 hours. Elizabeth's smile froze. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Your house? Honey, you're not well. You're confused. Mark, tell her." She looked around for Mark, but he wasn't there. Just Olivia, stepping out of the bathroom with her phone held high. "Everything's recorded," Olivia said calmly. "Every word, every forged document, every fraudulent claim. You're done, Elizabeth." Elizabeth's face went white, then red. She started blustering about misunderstandings and helping family and how dare we ambush her. I stood up. My legs were still weak, but I stood. I said, "Get out. Now, or I'll have hospital security remove you and call the police. Your choice." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, screaming about lawyers and how we'd regret this. The folder of forged documents stayed on my bed. Evidence. Olivia smiled. Now the real fun begins. Olivia filed criminal fraud charges the next morning. We had everything. The forged documents, the recordings, the false medical evaluations, witness statements from my neighbors who'd seen Elizabeth parading through my house like she owned it. The district attorney took one look at our evidence and fast-tracked the case. Elizabeth was arrested at her country club during her weekly tennis match. I wish I could have seen her face. She tried to claim she was only helping me. that she had my best interests at heart. But we had her recorded saying she'd been eyeing my house for years. We had proof she'd told multiple people I was dead. The judge set bail at $50,000, and for the first time in her entitled life, Elizabeth had to scrape together money she didn't want to spend. Then Olivia made the call to the IRS. Anonymous tip. For rental properties, 6 years of unreported income, approximately $400,000 in tax evasion. The IRS doesn't mess around with cases like that. Within a week, Elizabeth had auditors combing through every financial record she'd ever touched. They froze her bank accounts. They placed liens on her properties, including her house. That beautiful house she was so proud of, the one she'd bought with her dead husband's untaxed money. Suddenly it wasn't hers anymore. Elizabeth couldn't afford her high-priced lawyers after that. The fraud case alone was bleeding her dry, and now the IRS wanted back taxes plus penalties plus interest. $180,000. She didn't have it. Her assets were frozen. She had to sell her house just to stay out of deeper trouble. Oliva drove by during the estate sale, watching her sell off her furniture, her jewelry, her designer clothes on tables in her driveway. She saw her. Their eyes met. She smiled and kept driving. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Turns out when you commit fraud and tax evasion, professional boards tend to frown on that. Her friends stopped calling. Her country club membership was quietly revoked. In the real estate community where reputation is everything, Elizabeth became toxic. No one would touch her. Meanwhile, I filed for divorce. Mark tried to apologize. He showed up at the hospital with flowers and tears, saying he didn't know it would go this far. That his mother had convinced him it was all legal and proper. That he was just trying to help. I looked at him, this man I'd loved for 7 years, and felt absolutely nothing. You knew enough, I said. I was in a coma, Mark. I almost died. And you helped your mother try to steal my home. You threw away my mother's memorial. You called me confused when I questioned anything. You chose her over me when I needed you most. He tried to argue, said he deserved another chance. I had Olivia serve him the divorce papers right there in my hospital room. The house was my inheritance, protected from marital assets. He got nothing. He moved back in with Elizabeth in her sad little apartment. I heard later that arrangement lasted about 2 months before they were screaming at each other constantly, blaming each other for how everything fell apart. I was discharged from the hospital 3 months after the accident. Sarah drove me home. My real home. Elizabeth had changed the locks, but Olivia had already handled that with a locksmith and a police escort. I walked through my house for the first time since the accident. Elizabeth had redecorated everything. My furniture was gone. My photos were gone. My mother's quilt that had been on the living room couch. Gone. Sold or trashed. But the structure was still there. The bones of my grandmother's house. My history. I spent the next month reclaiming it. I repainted. I bought new furniture. I rebuilt my mother's memorial garden, bigger and more beautiful than before. Every rose I planted felt like taking back a piece of myself. My physical therapy was hard, but I pushed through. My career had suffered, but my clients were understanding. I started taking on projects again, small ones at first, then bigger. I was good at my work. I'd forgotten that while I'd been busy making myself smaller for Mark and his mother. 6 months after everything went down, Elizabeth showed up at my door. She looked terrible, tired, defeated, older somehow. She asked if we could talk. I almost said no, almost slammed the door, but I wanted to hear what she could possibly say. She stood on my porch, the porch of the house she'd tried to steal, and begged. She was broke, facing 18 months in minimum security prison for the fraud conviction. Her credit was destroyed. She'd never work in real estate again. She was living in a 600-square-foot apartment in a neighborhood she used to mock. Could I help her? Family helps family, right? I let her finish. Then I spoke. You tried to steal my home while I was in a coma fighting for my life. You threw away my mother's memorial like it was garbage. You turned my husband against me. You called me incompetent and confused and forged documents to declare me mentally unfit. You told people I was dead so you could take what was mine. And now you want me to help you. You want family loyalty? I stepped closer. I'm not incompetent, Elizabeth. I'm not confused. I'm not weak. I'm just done being nice to people who see kindness as weakness. I closed the door in her face. Through the window, I watched her walk to her beat-up car, the only thing the IRS hadn't seized. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time before driving away. I never saw her again. Elizabeth served 18 months in prison. When she got out, she moved 2 states away. Mark remarried someone she hates. I heard through mutual friends that Elizabeth isn't allowed at their house. The irony isn't lost on me. As for me, I'm thriving. My business is better than ever. I bought 2 investment properties with money I made from new clients. I'm dating someone kind and supportive who thinks my memorial garden is beautiful. Some days I still can't believe how close I came to losing everything. People say living well is the best revenge. They're right. But I have to admit, watching Elizabeth lose everything she valued came pretty close. She wanted my house so badly she destroyed her entire life trying to take it. And I'm still here. Still standing. Still in my grandmother's house with my mother's roses blooming in the garden. They tried to erase me. Instead, they erased themselves. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and feel free to share your story or opinions in the comments.